Hey everyone, my name is Venerin, and in today's video we're going to have a look at LeetCode's number 20, valid parentheses. So this is an easy question, and it is asking from us to essentially validate whether a string is valid, does contain a valid amount of opening and closing brackets into the correct order. So you can see that the type of brackets are essentially given right here. So we have three different types of brackets. There is no mention of any other characters that can be inside our string. And these are the three essentially rules that determine whether or not a string is valid. So the opening brackets must be closed by the same type of brackets. For example, right here, opening brackets must be closed in the correct order. So this means that essentially every bracket is closed in the correct order, and every closed bracket has a corresponding open bracket of the same type. So for example, if you're given just this closing bracket and there is no opening bracket of this type, this is an invalid input. So let's think how we can do this. We can essentially start from left to right, and we essentially need to check for three different types of brackets. But the type of brackets are not that important. What is important is whether or not we have the corresponding opening bracket when we are at a closing bracket. So to use some kind of data structure here, we can probably use a stack, which we are going to put in the opening brackets inside. And then once we encounter a closing bracket, we should check whether or not the last put it into the stack opening bracket is of the same type. So essentially this is the solution. Just keep a stack, put every opening bracket in it, and when we encounter a closing bracket, we should first check whether or not the stack is empty. And if that's the case, we have an invalid string. And if it is not empty, we're going to pop the last bracket, and we should do a matching or mapping of the opening and closing type and confirm that the type is correct. So I'm going to start by creating a dictionary with the different type of pairs that we have. So we have only three types of parentheses, and I'm going to pair the opening and closing brackets of those. And I'm using a Vim binding here if you're wondering. And the last is the square bracket. Okay, so we have all of the pairs in a corresponding mapping. So this will map from the opening to the closing brackets here. And then I'm going to essentially get just the opening brackets so we can check whether or not the current character is an opening bracket. And I'm going to create a set of those using the dictionary key method. So as I've discussed, we're going to need a stack, and this essentially is going to be just a list. And then for each character, we're going to do some checkings. And essentially at the end of this, I'm going to check whether or not the stack is empty. And if the stack is empty, this means that every opening bracket has a corresponding closed brackets. And now, since we are going to pop from the stack each time that we encounter the correct type of closing bracket, and if the stack is empty, this means that the number of brackets are valid and the whole string is valid. All right, so now we need to essentially check whether or not the current character is into the opening brackets. And if that's the case, I'm going to append to the stack. Otherwise, we have to do one check, and this check is whether or not the stack is empty. So we are at the closing bracket. And if we're at the closing bracket and the stack is empty, this means that we don't have a corresponding opening bracket. And I'm going to return false here because we are not matching the closing bracket with an opening one. And another condition that we need to check here is whether or not the current opening bracket or the last opening bracket, which is going to be this one, last opening bracket, if the mapping between the last opening bracket is different than the current char. So this will essentially give us the corresponding closing bracket. And if that's the case, I'm going to return false because the opening bracket doesn't match the closing bracket here. So this should be the solution. Let me run this. I'm checking with a char. All right, I have a typo here. So this runs fine. Let's, for example, get this. Okay, so this is invalid since we have opening before the closing here. Let's check. This one. This one seems all right too. What about an empty string? Oh, so this invalid case since the string is guaranteed to have at least one character. So let's do this. Okay, this is invalid. And yeah, it should be good actually. And as you can see, we have correct submission and everything seems to be all right. So let's just do a manual validation with some of the examples that I've given you. Let's say this one. Because oftentimes you would be required, when you're solving those types of problems, you would be required to verify manually what the program is doing without making a submission. So let's go through this. In our example, the first character is going to be the opening bracket. And then we are going to append this character, which is the opening bracket, to the stack, which noun will contain. So here I'm going to go through this example. And currently the stack has this bracket. All right. So at the next character, and the character is going to, the current character is going to be this. And this again is an opening. So the stack would have this and this. The current character is now the square closing bracket. And in this case, we are going to go here. The stack is not empty, so we're going to pass through this. And I'm going to pop the last opening bracket. And this is going to be this one. The last opening bracket is going to be this. And then we are going to check whether or not the mapping of this, which is going to be mapping, is going to be this, whether or not this is equal to this, and it is not, so we're going to return false. So this is one of the ways to verify that your code is working, and you would often be required to do that when you're asked those types of questions. And the space and type complexity for this is going to be O of 1 for both time and space. Because for the time, we are essentially looking through each character at least once in the worst case. So you can imagine that you have only opening brackets, for example, and then you essentially go through the entire string and put it into a stack. And this would be a worst case example. So you're going to check each one for time, and then you're going to store each opening bracket, each character of our string into the stack. So this would also be linear. So thank you for watching, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe. And I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye.